Okay, so let's start by thinking about what the internet is used for. So at a very basic level, the internet is used to move data from one location to another. So this would be like if I had a message and I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I wanted to send this message from me to you. So the challenge that we're going to try to solve over this entire lecture is how can we build a system that lets me send this message from me to you no matter where you are in the world. And as it turns out, there is a very nice analogy where we can find a lot of solutions to our problems, and that is the postal service. So in case you haven't used it in a while or you don't remember, there is this thing called the postal service, and what it does is it lets us send letters or packages between people no matter where they are in the world. So over this lecture, we're going to try to compare how the postal service is similar to the internet that we've designed. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need to send mail is something that moves. So we have a couple of options here. For example, we can use a mailman. We can have a pizza delivery guy send a message for us. Maybe in history you remember this thing called the Pony Express, where they had these people riding horses across the Wild West to send messages. Maybe you remember this thing called a homing pigeon or a carrier pigeon, where they train pigeons to fly across two locations to send messages. The point is, the first thing we're going to need is something that moves. Okay, so obviously in the internet we don't use anything like pigeons or delivery guys or horses or anything like that. What we do use is something that moves bits over space. So the simplest example of this would be like a wire, and the wire would have these voltage signals that tell us whether a 0 or a 1 is being sent. And nowadays we even have these like wireless ways to transmit bits across space. The point is, the very fundamental building block of the internet is something that moves bits across space. Okay, so now we have something that moves, and one thing you can imagine doing with that is coming up with a system that lets us talk with the people in our local apartment complex. So we haven't built our way up to talking with everybody in the world yet, but first we're going to try to build a small system that lets us talk with everyone just in my local apartment complex. And this is going to look like a local area network in actual networking. So now I'm going to let Dave explain what a local area network looks like.
All right, so let's start with networking. I want to start with local area networks before we get to the whole big internet. Two kinds of local area networks. One is a point-to-point. If I've got two machines that I want to just be able to talk to each other, then I can put a wire between the two machines and they can talk to each other. No big deal. Things get a little more interesting when I have a shared network, like an Ethernet. The way Ethernet works, basically, the most basic kind of Ethernet, is there's a wire, and all of those computers are connected to the wire. Okay? So at any point, one of those machines can send some bits on that wire, and all the other machines on that same Ethernet will be able to see what bits were sent. Okay? All right. Question for you, warm up for you to think about. Suppose machine A on that shared Ethernet wants to send a message to machine C. How do we do that? Like, what do we need to build in to make sure that that's possible?